Yeah. What's up? What's going on, folks? Boxing history every night, baby. Shout out to Boxing Chit holding it down. It's me, Joshua City Brewer. Yeah. My favorite team, Milwaukee Brewers. Salute to them. Anyway, what's going on, world? We're here, and it's another good night to talk boxing, as we always do. I mean, when is it not a good night to talk boxing? I'm sure we can poll the audience, all that good stuff, and everyone will have their own thoughts regarding such. But it's always, most certainly, always a good night to talk boxing, and I appreciate being able to do so. So I thank everyone who will be listening to the playback gang. Salute to you all. Shout out Nick Hammer. I know he always says that playback gang. Yeah, appreciate it, Nick, without a doubt. But certainly, yeah, happy to be here once again talking boxing. This is going to be a little bit more on the modern side. If you've seen the title, you know what it is. We're going to be interviewing a cruiserweight, and cruiserweight needs love. Cruiserweight has always been one of those low-key hidden divisions that has talent, and we have an American cruiserweight on the rise who can be one you can jump behind and stand behind, without a doubt. So I'm happy about that, and that cruiserweight is Sonny Bleep McEwen. So I'm looking forward to it, without a doubt. Shout out to my man Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz and More in the mix right here. Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz and More. I've said it once, I'll say it again. If you haven't followed Bruce Gas, then you're missing out. Go check him out right now, ASAP. Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz and More. Hence the jazz and more, because you get it all, the full gamut there with Bruce, but a lot of classic boxing talk, and I love it. As mentioned, I think I was mentioning this last week, because it was last week. I was able to chat with Bruce as he was watching Danny Lopez take on Mike Ayala, a fight I hadn't seen, a war, and it was a beautiful thing. So appreciate you, Bruce, as always. Appreciate Bruce. Boxing Beta's fight showcases. Hey, give him a follow. A lot of great edits there. Hey, I'm appreciative, and it was an honor, Boxing Beta, to just for you to be able to create that edit that you did on your channel. Everyone check him out. Boxing Beta's fight showcases in the mix here on YouTube, doing his thing, and nothing but success is what I wish you, Boxing Beta. He sends his hello to all. So I appreciate you, Boxing Beta, without a doubt. Happy that you're here to join us and chime in, tune in with what's going on. Bruce Gas says, check this out later. Gotcha, Bruce. Without a doubt, we'll check it out. We'll check it out. I know it's a link. If it's hopefully maybe you're doing something, I'm definitely going to be there. If you're doing something, Bruce, because you know I'm always down for that. So I will check that out. Shout out to my man Black Boxing. Everyone, give him a like or a follow as well. Hey, he's about to drop some good things. I mean, young guy out there diving into the history, and I've interacted with him. I know he's knowledgeable. He's really dug in. He's really looked into what's going on, and I appreciate being able to connect and always enjoy the dialogue that we get to have on the channel as well. So salute to your Flat Boxing. You already know this. Run the likes up. Run those likes up, baby. Run those likes up. You know what they say, we're trying to get popular around here. I'm definitely down to get popular. Boxing Beta says, I'm watching Legendary Champions 1882, 1923. Hey, I know that like the back of my head, Boxing Beta right there. That is certainly a dope one right there. So I appreciate you checking it out, showing love, and letting us know. If you haven't seen that, definitely check that out. I hope you get 1 million subscribers. I'll be waiting. Hey, that's what my spouse has been telling me. I'm getting there. I'm looking to make it happen for sure. And I will definitely get in the mix. Look at Bruce showing love, as always showing love. And, but yeah, as I mentioned, of course, we're here tonight to talk to Sonny Bleep McEwen. And, it's a beautiful thing being able to get an American cruiserweight in the mix, because I've been telling you, and I'll say it again, that the cruiserweight division is one of the most slept on divisions in boxing. It might be the most, and there's a lot of talent there, and they deserve to get that shine that they need to get. And I'm going to do my part in trying to help make sure that happens for sure. So the man himself is here. I'm going to be letting him here in the mix. And as you all saw, it's titled, you know the name, Sonny Bleep McEwen. And it's great to have him here in the mix. What's good with you, Sonny, the businessman, Sonny, as well as boxer.
How you doing, brother?
Hey, all is good. All is good. Appreciate you taking the time to drop by. As a matter of fact, I was chatting with Monster Yo, as a matter of fact, last night, and it just so happened because he liked the post that I had made, and then we were chatting for a little bit, and I had remember hearing his name on Skywalker Boxing's podcast or whatever, and I was saying to myself, man, yeah, it's just good to see that you have someone genuine backing you. As a brother, it's good to just see that you have someone else that is out there genuinely backing you, and a friend, first and foremost, a friend and all that stuff, looking out for you and helping you do your thing, and there on your side as you go through the process.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's always a blessing.
Oh, yes. And so real quick, so you have a fight coming up July 29th, Commerce Casino. So what are the details of that? Who are you going up against? All that good stuff.
So I'm going up against the journeyman, Demetrius Banks. I'll be headlining at Commerce Casino, July 29th.
Okay. That's good to go. I was able to actually catch your last fight, so I got a good feel for things as it was going on. Now you were in there with a guy. I know he was taller and all that stuff, and man, I got to be honest, he was doing a lot of holding, and I know you're trying to get your offense off, and I was saying, man, please do not ride this dude when they were doing the scorecards or whatever, because this dude, he was just holding you anytime that you landed something on him, and he was a taller guy and all that stuff. But yeah, how did you feel coming out of that, right there as you were waiting for the cards to be read and all that good stuff?
I mean, I was confident that I won just based on the fact that they can see that he was initiating the grappling. So I was confident that I won, but I was just frustrated that I couldn't get my shots off like I really wanted to. Bruce, how you doing, brother?
Oh yeah. Bruce Gas in the buildings. Yeah, I know you chatted with Bruce, so I tell people all the time, Bruce, they need to get over there and check him out right there. Man should write a book. Bruce, we appreciate you. And then of course, shout out to my man Skywalker Boxing. Yeah, Skywalker, he had initially I know linked the two of us up, so appreciate Skywalker for that and all this. But yeah, we're moving from the boxing just real quick. I just want to know about you as the businessman. You're in the real estate and all that stuff, so a lot of fighters coming into the game and all that, and even as they're going through their career in the beginnings, they don't necessarily have that mindset or that business aspect down. And I've seen some of your stuff and how you operate, and I said, yeah, this hey, he's well put together. He smart, well put together, and he has that right mindset that I think others could benefit from. So what kind of led to that?
I mean, initially I've always had the mind to be an entrepreneur. So I started off reading books by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and stuff like that. So I've always just had the mind to just create a legacy and make my wealth work for me as opposed to me clocking in all the time.
Okay, good stuff right there. Yeah, definitely know about that. Real quick, Lane 99 appreciates that his nickname is literally Bleep. That is the funniest, most awesome nickname I've ever heard. Where did that come from, Bleep?
So it's actually from the street, so it actually means sleep. So but some street stuff. So man, it just actually means bleep, but it's actually sleep. Yeah.
Okay, I get you for sure. Yeah, I got you right there. Sleep, hey, you can do that in the sport of boxing for sure. You can get people put to sleep. Number 5 cruiser in the USA. So yeah, that's what I was mentioning. Cruiserweight, slept on division right there. I mean, yeah, it's one of the tops. It's always been talented and all that stuff. So were you an athlete coming up, or how did you get into boxing? How did you end up doing that?
I've always been an athlete, so I grew up playing basketball. I mean, really any sport, basketball, football, even soccer at the park. I really wasn't into baseball, but mainly basketball and football are like the main sports that I was into. And then around like 15 years old, I came across Rogers Park in my neighborhood in Inglewood, and I started training there, and in boxing, and I was interested in boxing since.
Okay. Inglewood, yeah, that is correct. From Inglewood, California. Hey, legendary spot right there. What's the
Yes,
boxing
sir.
scene like in Inglewood these days?
It's not a real boxing scene. I mean, they even closed Rogers Park, so it's really not even anywhere for the kids as of right now to go in terms of, if they're interested in boxing, they'll have to go outside the city. Even though LA, I mean, Inglewood's inside of LA County, but still, like, it's nothing like having your own in your backyard.
Okay, good stuff like that. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that is pretty crazy. We've seen it here. I do some officiating here in DC, and
Hmm.
on the amateur side, or just not just here specifically, but just across the board. It's just keeping boxing as one of those things that is active and keeping more of these gyms out there. I think that is a big thing as far as some of
Yeah,
the youth that is coming up for sure. You know.
absolutely.
So yeah. So yeah, I hope that some people they see that and they continue to invest in such. And I think the good thing to hear is like DC has the DC Parks and Recreation, so I know they're big on
Hmm.
it. So they're always
Yeah,
doing shows that are tied to them as well. So I think that is a
yeah.
plus. So yeah, again, you're a cruiserweight. Uh, how long have you been pro now? How long is it?
Uh, I mean, it hasn't even been a full 2 years yet. I turned pro February last year, so
Okay,
it hasn't even
February of
been a full
last
two
year.
years yet.
Okay,
Yeah.
hey, you're already moving up there, and number 5 cruiserweight in the USA, Bruce Gas list right here, and it's pretty much wide open at this point. So I know you have opportunity right there. You ever watch some of the guys that are the champions right now? And it's kind of in an interesting space. You have Jay Opataya, Coley is up there, Richard Reactor, the Amarius Breedis, Dortico, some of the guys who kind of the old guard, I guess you can say. So what are
Exactly.
your
Yeah,
thoughts on the division? Just looking at it from kind of where you are, being the top, and where do you see yourself, or where do you see your trajectory at this point?
So I mean, last year I was watching the top 20 in terms of cruiserweight. So I was watching the top 20 last year, just like, because I started off in Mexico and stuff like that. So I was watching the top 20 in the country, and then of course I was obviously watching the champions as well. So I was watching the British. I mean, I was watching Usyk before he even actually moved up to heavyweight. So
Okay.
I've had a pretty good feel of the cruiserweight space and what's been going on. So we're excited about moving forward, going forward.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, you've been watching Music since he was a cruiserweight. Okay, that's a way to go right there. Taking that trajectory, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, that led to some good things. I know they did previously have the World Boxing Super Series, and they always featured cruiserweight as a part of that tournament. Man, that would be an awesome thing to bring back because, as I've said, cruiserweight has always had a great deal of talent, and it's good to see Americans getting some shine as well. So I want to see you do your thing because I think that's one of the reasons as well. There haven't been as many American cruiserweights that have been out there like that here over the
Yeah,
last several
exactly.
years or whatever. So that's right for the taking right there for you. And yeah, just based
Absolutely.
on what I've seen and everything, especially your mentality and all that stuff, yeah, you're poised to be one of those that can sort of take it there for Americans and kind of lead that path. So I think that'll be
Yeah,
a good thing. I think that'll be a
absolutely.
good thing without a doubt. Real quick salute to Skywalker Boxing jumped in the mix
Oh,
as
what's going on, man?
Bruce Gas Boxing showing love and all that stuff. Also salute to Rodolfo Rivera Jr. Sonny gifted complete package for a cruiserweight, without a doubt, complete package right there. Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. Now, like, what is what is your like routine like as far as I know you're doing the business thing and all that kind of from a training perspective? How do you balance that as far as running your business, handling that side, which definitely is a must, as well as kind of pulling in that training piece of it and staying in shape because of course clearly you're in shape, so that's not an issue. So you're obviously balancing it somehow. So how's that work for you?
I mean, to me, it's perfect just based on I get to create the day I want. Based on I mean, so for me, it's about when I'm waking up, setting my mindset in terms of getting my meditation and my daily devotions going on, and hitting the gym. So my day starts at around 4:30. So I'm up, and by the time it's time for me to get in terms of business, 9 o'clock, I've already completed, the first round of my day in terms of what my obligations are for fitness. So, in the morning, I'm doing my strength training, and then I'll take care of my business in terms of from like 9 to 12, for my real estate business, and after that, I'll go do my second round of training, which is my boxing training with my coach. And then my day's pretty free from there. So like, after about 2 or 3 o'clock, I get back to my business. And if I have any sort of meetings or closing or anything like that, then I'm good to go.
How's the line go? I'm not a businessman. I'm a business man. Hey, that's what I'm talking about right there. Mixing in some meditation, handling business, all that good stuff. I mean, hey, that's the full gamut right there. I like it though. You have that routine down. Consistency, hey, that seems to be the key for sure. So that's good stuff without a doubt. Salute Max Duran said, I have a question. How does it feel to get hit by a big punch? I guess it's an interesting one.
I mean, it's boxing, so it's I mean, you have different grades of, people that obviously pack different power, different punches. So, as far as being a pro, I've got hit by some pretty strong guys, but I think I've been hit by far stronger guys in sparring. So as of right now, I've been good. I've been able to, rebound and regather myself from off them punches.
Okay. Now, did you have an amateur career, or how was your amateur career? Do you have some amateur fights, all that good stuff?
So I only have 4 amateur fights.
Okay.
I started training like during the pandemic. Well, I got back into boxing during the pandemic, and I went to the Vegas Golden Gloves and I won that tournament.
Okay.
And I came back to California, had a fight, and we would just go to shows and try to get fights. We literally couldn't get fights. So we turned pro because we just couldn't get fights. We would literally go to shows and they'll take fighters off the board like he's not fighting today. So like, damn, that's crazy. So we did that about 2 or 3 different shows and like, man, we just gonna go pro. We're not gonna be driving around the whole California trying to get amateur fights.
Yeah, that I know exactly what you're talking about. That's the part of the amateur side that sucks right there, because oftentimes you don't know until you get there, and it's like
exactly
you put in all that work. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's the part that certainly needs to be fixed right there. Just thinking about it. Skywalker says, hopefully your next opponent doesn't try and clinch and hold.
Yeah, man, that was frustrating. I mean, this guy, he's a journeyman, so he's definitely. I believe he's definitely coming to fight. I feel like, this guy and one of the other guys before him, well, definitely the last guy, he was kind of looking to pad his record, and he didn't want to. I mean, he's been dropped before, so I don't think he wanted to get dropped again. So, his thing was just holding because. The first round we were actually boxing a little bit. I was just kind of getting a feel for him, and after the first round, he just held me the rest of the fight.
Yeah. And I was catching that for sure. And that was probably the standout thing, that he just did not want to get touched by you. But I thought you handled it well, though, as far as like you said, you did what you could do to get him up off of you and all that stuff. And I think the right person won for sure. And that they say adversity is one of those things, and you might run into that again where some of those individuals are just not willing to engage like that. And of course, their first instinct is to just tie you up. So
yeah,
it is a critical thing right there. Salute to my mom, dropped in the building, says afternoon, son, make it do what it do. My mom getting here to check you out.
Hey,
Sonny. We got everybody dropping through for Sonny. That's good stuff, without a doubt. Now, I see this will be your 4th fight. So you're really trying to get it in. You're looking to fight even after this, I'd imagine, right before the end of the year.
So we're looking. Yeah. So this will be my 10th fight. The 4th fight of the year. So we're looking to close out with the whole 6 for the year.
Okay.
And this will probably be the last year in terms of me fighting every other month. So we just. We're just doing our grunt work on the upfront, just, so we can get ourselves out there. And now that we're in a space where it's like, we made our name, we established ourselves, we took on some tough fights and all that. Now it's like, now we can kind of set a little different pace and be a little more strategic.
Okay. I feel you right there. That is the way. Skywalker says he doesn't think you're in the spaceship. You got a spaceship out here. Hey, Sonny can do it all without doubt. He's in the spaceship. Okay, good stuff. But no, I think that is great right there. And that activity, we don't necessarily, in this day and age, of course, it's not like that for a lot of the top fighters as well. You know, they're usually getting about 1 to 2 fights a year. You know, and that's on the kind of high end or whatever. So it's good that you're kind of working that piece of it, getting yourself to that point. And number 5 already in the U.S. at Cruiserweight, so that is a good sign right there. So eyes are watching. You know, people are calling all of that good stuff. Now, I usually, of course, on this channel talk about history a lot. Just thinking about it now, as far as boxing, did you have any boxers sort of thinking back in the past, or any that kind of influence you? Maybe they're fighting, or just kind of seeing them do their thing, maybe their style, anything of that nature.
I'm a huge fan of Marvin Hagler, James Toney, Pernell Whitaker. Those guys kind of, you know, especially this camp, our thing is, you know, moving forward, we're not taking enough steps back. So, you know, obviously, if you know Hagler's a dog. He gonna walk you down. So, and you know, and also staying sharp in terms of like Pernell Whitaker and stay in your face and not get hit, but he's still not backing up. So like that's always been like, you know, our sort of mentality. Like, you know, and obviously James Toney is a master, you know, at countering defense and movement. So.
Yeah, without a doubt. You know, I can see that just from who you name. Mindset of a technician right there. It just stubborn and straight, like hey, never back down in the ring type of fighters right there. So I think that's a good way to. That's a good way to go about it. Skywalker says he's got a Tesla complete glass on the roof out of his spaceship. All right, good stuff. Hey, I like those. I test drove one once. That portion of just letting it drive itself, man, it's freaky. It's freaky to get used to. but no, that's good. That's a good stuff. Hey, 86's coach sends him old film into the classic. Okay, Skywalker boxing showing love. Yeah. I'm always for the love to the old school. Many influences out there in that regard. So yeah, that's something we kind of dig into. So I like that you have that mentality for it. And like, yeah, you seem very grounded and of course you're well spoken, all that good stuff, but you seem very grounded, pretty much even keel with this. And I guess it comes down to that kind of boxing thing. So I'd imagine for you, it's coming natural. Do you feel it's coming natural? Do you feel like, hey, I have found, you know, kind of this is my thing, this is my groove right here? Because you seem so very grounded and kind of just seem like just a natural at it. Just how you're going about this interview, you just kind of prepped and all that good stuff. I mean, I just want to know more about the mentality of Sonny McEwen. I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I grew up in the streets of Inglewood, so fighting was pretty much a day in the life sort of thing. So for me, I've always been a fighter, so it's just now I just get to display it in a different fashion. You know, there's not the rageful, loose part of it. Now it's more the tactful, you know, premeditated sort of approach. So, you know, I feel like it's definitely a perfect space for me, just based on boxing being that it's like a one-on-one sport. You literally get to see how you break a man down from the beginning of a fight to the end. So you can literally see like the difference in the face. I mean, it's not a lot of times it's subtle things. So like you subtly feel like, you know, at the beginning of the fight, you know, he's in your face, you want to fight, and like you start realizing, okay, now he's taking steps back, he's breathing a little harder, he's not as confident as his jab as he was before. You know, just little things like that. You know, if you go into the body, you see dropping his hands more. So it's just subtle things like that. So I just like to see, you know, over time how it just, you know, they just change.
Okay, yeah. You know, they say, it's the big piece of it, probably the big piece of it is the mental aspect. Yeah, just kind of thinking about that, like leading into a fight. You see some individuals, they may be back listening to music, some might be up, you know, just kind of really vibing, all that good stuff. What is your mentality like before you're getting ready to walk through those curtains, when you're back there knowing that you're getting ready to go to war?
Yeah, absolutely.
So okay, yeah, that's good stuff without a doubt. Now, do you watch some of the stuff going on like right now? I suppose you may watch some, like thinking about Crawford versus Spence, a fight that's considered the biggest in boxing. That's one of them for sure. Is that a fight you're interested in? You looking forward to that or anything of that nature?
Absolutely, we actually fight on the same night, so I actually be in the back
Yeah,
screaming it while we while we warming up for my fight. Yeah, I'm
yeah.
definitely. I mean, I feel like this is probably one of the biggest fights in boxing almost ever since probably Leonard and Hearns and Hagler, like when the big four fought each other.
Without a doubt.
So I feel like it's probably one of the big. I mean, it's just you don't really get people at this current stage. They're both in their prime, both champions, both elite fighters. Both tacticians. So it's like it's to me, it's gonna be an awesome fight. I'm looking forward to it because both of them have something to prove. Both of them are like at the peak of their talent in terms of where they are currently. So it's like it's awesome for me.
Yeah. This will be the first time you will get an undisputed welterweight champion in the four belt era. So much is at stake.
Yeah.
Now, who do you like in that fight? Or are there certain things that you like about one fighter, or certain things you like about both?
I love both of them, man. Like I'm a switcher myself, so I obviously love Crawford. Spence, just his dog-like personality in terms of he just gonna walk you down with them body shots. I think that changes fighters. I mean, because like if anybody knows Ugas is a really active fighter. And when you see like between the fourth and the sixth round, he just was like walking through sand just based on the body shots, slowed him down. So I know Spence is looking to bring that, and then like when you look at Crawford, he just adjusts so well when he fights people. So it's like the first couple rounds, he's he usually starts off right hand, and then once he figures it out, he goes southpaw. So and from there, he's letting go. So it's like to me, it's kind of based on who can establish their dominance. So it's like if Spence can establish his body punches, then it's gonna be a long night for Crawford. And if Crawford gets to adjusting and Spence can't, make an adjustment on top of his adjustment, and I think it can lean towards Crawford. So to me, I can't really lean towards one way just because they're both elite fighters.
Oh yeah, and that certainly, that has standing certainly coming from a fighter, just given the fact that you've been in there, you are in there, and you know how it is, and I think that's one of the things some people may not understand. Well, I think they'll understand it, but it's different when you're actually in there doing it. Just the amount of time you have to make a quick second split decision or something like that, just right there with literally seconds and all that. Like, kind of, what is that like for you? How could you explain that just for people to understand in terms of, you go into a camp, you work on what you work on, and of course, like you're saying, mano a mano, when you get in there, you only have pretty much seconds to dictate what is going on. So what's that like for you when you're in there? Are you thinking a lot? You're thinking about the game plan, or you're just kind of observing and trying to just kind of see what your opponent gives you?
I'm usually taking, so my thing is usually always to take what I'm going to get, and then from there, open up more. So, with Mino, it's always establish a jab because everything. I mean, to me, the jab is like the biggest distraction in boxing in terms of when you establish your jab strongly, they're so focused on your jab that everything else just becomes like a miss to them. So like to me, it's just extremely important to establish your jab, and even when you get in spaces to where you don't think it's as effective, just keep shooting it. So the jab is the most important punch in boxing to me, just based on it establishes your dominance. It can distract your opponent. It can frustrate your opponent just based on us being fighters. Nobody likes getting hit. So if they're getting tagged with a jab, they're not even really focused on what's coming after. So that's always our first thing is, establish the jab. And then as far as game plan, I mean, the jab in the body. So, distracting with the jab and slowing them down with the body. And from there, see what opens up after that. So that's the most extreme thing, establish your jab, make sure you're touching his body, slow him down, get him on his back foot, and from there we just take him what we can get.
Okay, yeah, good. Hey, good stuff right there. See, you have that mindset, you have everything down. You're already thinking about all of that next level stuff. Now, I saw that your first 4 fights were in Mexico. What was that environment like right there? Because it's pretty much, it can be hostile territory, depending on the situation. What was that like in Mexico?
It was. I mean, they were embracing the promoter that I ran to down there in Mount Roy. He was a great promoter. And he seemed pretty quickly like I guess he just recognized my talent pretty quickly, so he just started moving me like a prospect, like pretty much after the second fight. So I had 2 fights out there, and then from there he started giving me some pretty good paper fight in terms of, like, the third guy I fought was undefeated, was 1-0. Fought a guy 4-5. I fought a guy 7-2. So from there he was like, man. I mean, he didn't say it, but you can see, like, with with the opponents he was offering me up, because some guys go down there, they'll fight a bunch of guys that have no wins on the record. So, yeah, I was excited. So, it helps me out a lot in terms of confidence. Obviously getting my ring experience up and stuff like that.
All right, good stuff right there. That is good stuff, man. Yeah, that is great. Yeah, so like I was saying, I like what you're doing. I like the whole vibe you're on. Yeah, and I think, yeah, you can definitely be a beacon for those that are coming up in the sport as well. Those that are looking to get into the sport. Some of the young guys who may have their head in other places at times and all of that stuff. And I know that's a big piece of it, the discipline, like being a disciplinary and just thinking about all those things that are beyond just what you're doing on that single day there when you're in that fight, because so much leads into it, so much work goes into that process. As far as some of those that are coming up who may not have that sort of business sense or that mentality behind them, what kind of advice would you give one of these younger fighters who, a lot of things are going to be calling, but you got to stay focused on the ultimate prize, and that's how it's going to help you and also hopefully turn into something generational.
So our thing is me and my coach is, our thing is, just making sure we're established in terms of business. So what I mean in terms of that is, like, he runs a boxing business, so he's a boxing coach, he's training. And then obviously I'm doing my thing as an entrepreneur. So our thing is, like, as long as we're established in that space, on that lane, then in terms of boxing, I can just box out of, what's proper in terms of where I am currently in my career, as opposed to, some people get in positions to where, all they really have is boxing, and sometimes they have to take on, not necessarily opportunities, but they just have to take what they believe are opportunities just because they don't have many other options. So, like, I know some guys, and like I have a guy that I know that's in Louisiana. He's like, man, he's ready to just jump in and just fight. But I'm like, sometimes people don't have your best interest at heart. So and me just being in a position to where I wouldn't say I'm financially in terms of my financial journey, I'm where I'm completely want to be, but I'm in a position to where I can make decisions that aren't based on me, whether me making my rent or a life or death sort of thing. So it's like, if say a top rank or something was to call me to be a B-side against a guy that, we may not be in a position for currently in my career, I don't have to jump on that just based on, it's like, this is not the proper career decision currently. As a fighter, absolutely, I just have the heart to fight anybody, but on the business side, you have to make the proper decisions for where you are currently in your career.
I mean, hey, there it is, folks. I don't need to say more. You're hearing it from the man himself right there. Definitely someone we can stand behind and follow in the sport without a doubt. And I do appreciate you taking the time to drop in here with me there, Sonny. I mean, I was looking forward to this one, just seeing some of the footage and seeing how others spoke about you as well. And I knew it would be a good thing. So, like, where can people follow you on social media? I know you're on Instagram. You're on I imagine others as well.
Yeah, so you can. So my Facebook is in my personal name, Sonny McEwen. And then my Instagram is Uncommon with a K. So y'all also can follow my YouTube channel, Uncommon Lifestyle. So
Okay.
yeah, those are pretty much the platforms I'm on. And I'm obviously going to be up. You can catch the fight on Boxing TV on July 29th, BXNGTV.com. You can catch the fight. They'll stream it on the 29th. So yeah, man, just looking to close out the year strong.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah. And I'm gonna definitely share that on my page or on the YouTube page, and share that on the channels as well. I saw you had a flyer out there for it, so definitely want people to tune in and jump in the mix there. You heard it, folks. Uncommon with the K right there. But yeah, man, that's great stuff, man. Hey, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me, chat, all that good stuff, and hopefully we can do it again later down the road because I might want some
Absolutely.
business tips and all that stuff as well.
I got you, brother. I got you, man. No problem at all.
All right, salute to you. Appreciate you. You have a good one.
You have a great one as well, brother. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Sonny, folks, Sonny McEwen. Sonny McEwen. Salute to everyone who's dropped in, was able to catch us chatting with Sonny as he was giving us some details on a lot of the things that are going on with him and how he holds things down as a fighter. It's always good to have your head on straight and well-spoken guy. He's about his business without a doubt. Certainly without his business, and appreciate being able to do so. Salute to the Boz in the mix right here who dropped in, as well as Dan. I don't know if I mentioned you, Dan. And Skywalker Boxing says, I like that you guys are challenging yourself with tough competition lately. Cracking top 5 in the country is a big accomplishment. Without a doubt, Flat Boxing or Skywalker, without a doubt, that's big time right there. That shows that he's starting to get noticed. And that can lead to bigger things, bigger, better things, as they say. So I definitely look forward to being able to follow his career as he moves ahead. And shout out to Vaz. Have a good one, Milkshake. That is funny. But Cruiserweight. Yeah, the Cruiserweight division, that is one of the premier divisions in the sport. And I think that it offers fans an opportunity to see some of those guys that don't quite get the recognition they should probably have because, as I was mentioning to Sonny, the American scene, you don't have a lot of heavy cruiserweights that are out there from a mainstream or on the American side, which of course ultimately affects the mainstreams, or at least at those top level. You have him now coming up on that trajectory, and hopefully we see more who are able to get out and stand out in that regard. So I think it would certainly help the division as it moves forward because a lot of talent is there without a doubt. Let me see here. But Cruiserweight, Sonny Bleep McEwen. And I appreciate my man Skywalker Boxing for setting this up. He was instrumental in this actually happening. Salute to Skywalker. Everyone, give him a follow. Give him a subscribe. Show some love. Skywalker Boxing always showing love out here. And I think it's a beautiful thing. That's what it's about in the sport. Just sharing that knowledge, sharing the love, sharing experiences. We're deep into the history, so that's one thing we're keen on. I like to hear opinions from all, and I like for them to be able to get their understanding from what it is that they interact with or what you all read, what you all may watch, and sharing it, I think, is a big piece of, just us continuing to build this community. It doesn't have to be adversary, Fighters can step in the ring and then, bury the hatchet. So we should be able to do that on other fronts as well. Now, I might have random acoustic thoughts jumping on because we're going to have a discussion tomorrow. We're having a discussion. Sonny Bo Williamson, remember him. I feel like I remember the name there, the Boz, but you might have to break it down. Dan says, sharp guy, well-spoken. I got to follow him. He's a real businessman, but boxing is a business too. Yes, indeed. Indeed it is business. Salute to you again, Skywalker. Everyone showing love to Skywalker. Yeah, okay, cool. Skywalker Boxing says, hook me up. He's gonna hook me up with a bunch of people who've interviewed. Appreciate you, Skywalker. No doubt about it. Appreciate you always showing the love. And likewise, I know we were talking about us actually working on some stuff, so we have some things in motion. At least we have some things preliminarily in motion. So expect to see some collaborations from Skywalker. And Skywalker says, I'll try to hook you up with Onito. I'll be with them this weekend. Awesome, Skywalker. I mean, you're the truth out there, man. The truth. I appreciate it, brother. Without a doubt. Army as well. Hua. We were talking about that yesterday. Hey, showing that love. Shout out to all the vets out there as well. Shout out to all the vets. But no, that would be great. Nonito Donaire, the Filipino Flash. I mean, his name is already known. It rings bells around boxing. We know the types of runs that Donaire has been on. I mean, one of the pound for pound best fighters in the world right there. You just look at it over totality, especially when you take into account the last decade as well. And he's still out here putting in that work. So what he's doing is showing you that, hey, you can teach an old dog new tricks, or an older dog, because he's at a weight that works for him. He's all about the nutrition, all about all of that stuff that ties it together. So that is a big piece of it, without a doubt. Nonito Donaire, Alejandro Santiago, WBC bantamweight title. Gonna be looking forward to that. Boz mentions Williamson, heavyweight. Cool. So real quick, let me drop in my man Random Acoustic Thoughts, who's in the building. And one of the things is we are going to actually do a show tomorrow on his channel, and I'll stream it on this channel as well. But it's going to be through Random Acoustic Thoughts channel. And we're going to be talking about some of the great fantasy matchups that a lot of people talk about, a lot of people have an interest in. So Random, I appreciate you. So I know you can dive into it, Random. We have been discussing this over a course of a few days, and I'm looking forward to it. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm feeling good, brother. Thanks for having me on. Hey, it's raining like hell. I'm hiding in the car. So I don't know if that's going to affect my audio on my weird headphone jackless phone here. Excellent phone. Excellent phone. Fantastic camera. Works like a dream, but doesn't plug in. I'm too old. I'm like, it needs that hole. But anyway, tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern time, folks.
6 p.m.
86 and myself are going to have a discussion on fantasy fights. We're going to look at common stylistic opponents. We're going to look at overall experience. We're going to try and figure out when these guys' absolute peak was. We're talking, I've got the thumbnail up, prime versus prime, but it's really peak versus peak. It might even come down to a single fight for some of these guys, like the way they performed in that particular fight, but also through the prism of that particular style of opponent. You know, certain fights, say like the thumbnails, Ali and Sam Langford. Well, prime versus prime is not going to look like Ali Foreman, because Langford and Foreman could hardly be prime versus prime, or like all the polar opposite of the dangerous heavyweight, even though they were both great at their best. So yeah, we're going to get into it. We're going to go pretty deep. I'm not sure how many we're going to do. Originally, we were going to do 10 each. And then we were like, there's no way in 2 hours we can go through 20 fights. So then we're like, maybe we'll do 10. And then we're like, all right, that's like 12 minutes a fight. So what we're going to do is we're pretty much going to talk ourselves. Like, I think we're going to do an after show where we read back the chat from this talk, and then the chat from the after chat show. And then we'll address everything everyone else said, but we are just going to talk. This is going to be a discussion, 86 and myself. And we're going to try and get, this is much like the countdowns that I did with, with Scrapbook Boxing and the Boxing Librarian, and also with you, Josh. This is pretty much discussion for us, but we will later do a follow-up show where we'll address everyone's input. So feel free to lend the input, but we just got to keep it moving, man. 12 minutes a fight. Doing 10. If we do 5, that's only 24 minutes a fight. Some of these fights, Ali Langford alone could be a 2-hour show.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to this. If we only get to 3 fights, that's fine. You know, we'll just shout out to everyone in the chat right now. But we'll just do what we can, and we'll do other episodes in the future. I don't do a lot of fantasy fight stuff. I prefer like historical research. But then I jumped on your epic 6.5-hour live stream twice, and fantasy fights did come up. So, like Tommy Ryan Walcott and Langford. I think we Langford Marciano, and we talked about, what was it? We talked about Dempsey versus Jeanette.
Yeah, Marciano versus, I feel like Frazier might have come up in some fashion.
Frazier, yeah. We were talking about, I think it was Frazier Marciano. Was it Frazier Marciano?
Yeah. I think it was. I think that's one that kind of came in the mix. I remember that being a topic or whatever. So
maybe I'll make that one of them. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. This is going to be a heck of a discussion, and I'm sure there'll be future episodes. And maybe even at some, it's like we'll just have to see. But yeah, just as a heads up to everybody, it's not a diss if we don't mention the chat. I've done it before in certain historical talks. I'm easily distracted. And my tiny brain's got to be 100% on what 86 is saying here. A really good one. If you guys want to go ahead and do some pre-research for the hardcores there, check out this scan through Jess Willard, the conqueror of an older Jack Johnson, and Fred Fulton, who wanted to fight with Willard, was a top contender. He lost to Dempsey and Wills, but around those two fights against those great fighters, he knocked out a whole slew of people. He has a fantastic overall record. Powerful fighter. Jess Willard, Fred Fulton will be one of the ones that definitely comes up. But if you're not familiar with those guys' resume, go and take a look. And also take a look at Gunboat Smith. He's going to be in one of my fantasy fights. Gunboat Smith beat Sam Langford and Jess Willard in the same year. If I'm not mistaken, in 1914, he beat both those dudes. So Gunboat Smith, very underrated fighter, very tough schedule.
Yeah, he was in with a lot of top level competition without a doubt. So that should be interesting. So yeah, you hear it, folks. Yeah, we're gonna have some interesting ones that we'll be discussing, and of course, I'm sure others will have their thoughts and all of that. We'll try to say some things in the chat when when one of us is going or whatever. But very intriguing stuff. Gunboat Smith, well-traveled fighter without a doubt. And Langford's gonna be in there. Some other ones. Greb, I know you all probably expect to see that. It may be in there. We'll see.
There's a 100% chance that Harry Greb will appear in this. In fact, I'll go ahead and say, because I know I have it's on my channel, so I can guarantee that Harry Greb, Sam Langford, Rocky Marciano, Jack Dempsey, who else? The great Muhammad Ali, a fighter whose overlap. What do they call it? The Venn diagram with the circles of greatness as a person and a fighter is just a circle. The great Muhammad Ali. He had a learning curve and stuff like that. A lot of people did that. Like they go through a militant phase, then they figure out some things about the world. But what a great man he was. What a great spirit. So we will definitely be bringing those guys up and a whole bunch of others. We might just skim through some quickly too. But but we might have to do something like, both Sugars, Leonard Robinson. That seems like a fight. Some of them will be less obvious. Some of them will be like, oh yeah, of course you want to pit some of the absolute all-time greats from different eras. But some of them, we throw a curve. I'm gonna slap Gunboat in one of those. So be prepared. So.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, it is always tough with these. So that adds to the mix for sure. And yeah, I look forward to it as well because we really haven't dove into a fantasy-based type discussion. I think previously, we haven't. So I look forward to those. And for those who might not know, but I'm sure many do know, Random and I, we did do a long, or it's like 5 or 6 part series on the great Harry Wills. So this adds intrigue to the mix as well. So Harry Wills will be on there, but I'd recommend checking that out, which is on Random's channel, the Harry Wills playlist. He dives deep into his career and a lot of the happenings during his time frame and era and what made him stand out and why he is one of the greatest heavyweights that we've seen in history, though he hasn't always got the right accolades and recognition.
Yeah, absolutely. And Harry Wills suffered from what Sam Langford suffered from was during his prime, the champions were hardly fighting, and they definitely weren't fighting him because he was too good. Dempsey, I don't know if Dempsey would have won if he'd have been able to get him out of there, but in a long fight, in a championship fight at this time, it's kind of stacked against Dempsey because he has that style that works so well, works really well against big guys. But Wills had an inordinately long reach, and he'd fought a tougher schedule than Dempsey. Wills had been through wars with some of the greats. Dempsey is a great fighter, had great wins, but the experience counts, and that's why, when Dempsey was coming up, he had the opportunity to fight Langford in, I think it was 1916. Langford's schedule, he was in the middle of probably one of the toughest years, to me, the toughest year in boxing history. All the Hall of Fame fights Langford had that year. Dempsey had an opportunity to go cut his teeth against Langford, but he declined. He also declined to fight Jeanette. But to be clear, okay, because I know this starts a thing with Dempsey. Dempsey was a great fighter, and I won't hear that he wasn't. I ranked him like 6th in that first 25 years. That rich heavyweight lineage, I got him at number 6. He was a great fighter. If I criticizing, I'm not saying he can't be great as a businessman or a fighter or a cultural icon. I'm just talking about the nitty gritty of the bookings. Just like plenty of great fighters have had trouble with certain matchups. They just didn't, look at Mike McCallum. There were lots of guys that had opportunity to fight Mike McCallum, right? Did they want to? No, they had other big fights in mind. That's what a lot of these guys went through. They could still have important fights and be great, but it doesn't always work out like threading the needle of actually making the fight happen. That's why we're all so shocked Spence Crawford is a real thing. Who'd given up on that? Almost everybody had given up on that fight. They're getting older. Anyway, without getting into all that. So with these fantasy fights, I want to make clear, we're not talking about who the greater fighter is. We're talking about a specific fight. Maybe we'll extrapolate it out if they fight a series, because certain fighters, you give Archie Moore 3 cracks at you, separate from, unless you're Ezra Charles, unless you're another top 10 all-time great, like Archie Moore is going to figure out your style. Like certain guys are brilliant. So Archie Moore will definitely appear as well. I can tell you that. I'm going to get him in there.
Oh, yeah. The great Archie Moore, old mongoose. I mean, one of the most traveled guys in boxing history against a high level of opposition throughout, even at an older age. Probably the greatest older fighter that the history of the sport has seen, because on that back end, and even when he won that title, this wasn't a prime and fresh Archie Moore, but he was still at an elite level, and he was able to maintain that for a number of years. And Fogelball says Dipsy could only fight little guys, not the sharpest knife in the drawer. Funny, Dan, talking about polar ball. Salute polar ball, Marco. What's going on?
Yeah, also, like on my channel, like we won't be using any broad generalizations, because Dempsey's 2 best wins were against really big guys. So we're not going to entertain any of that on my channel. I don't get into any of if it's not factually verifiable, we won't be doing it. But 86, you put in the work. And I've had so much fun the other day doing these fantasy fights. I was like, okay, we need to do an actual show. We need to be able to boil this down. And I know you've researched, I'm learning from you. I'm learning from some of your videos. So like Fulton Willard, I'm having to catch up, man. I'm having to go and do my research. So, and maybe we should just slip Tommy Ryan in there. We should think about the guys that Sullivan, guys that you've actually gone in and done the full videos on. McVeigh. Yeah. McVeigh Tyson, maybe McVeigh Tyson needs to be one of those. What do you think, brother?
I was thinking about that. Certainly a major gap as far as where their careers came, but certainly an interesting one. I think it will be pretty interesting to think about McVeigh Tyson, because they were both around the same size. Tyson was probably at points heavier in instances, but they were generally around the same size. Both offensive fighters, explosive, strong fighters. They could handle the rough and the nip and tuck aspect of just kind of dealing with an opponent in the trenches, all of that good stuff. So it makes it very, very interesting for sure. So that might be one that we'll have to check out. And you did mention Grant Fulton. I think that would be a good one as far as, or it would have been a good one to have Fulton and Willard, because I think it would have been filmed if it had actually happened back then.
And it was a fight to make. There was a time when Fulton was one of the clear top contenders, but Willard wasn't fighting. He fought, Frank Moran? Hey, I got to mention also, on your live the other day about Walcott, I said that Jeanette was supposedly going to get the title shot if Moran won the title, but we were in the middle of talking about Willard. I was referring to the fight with Jack Johnson.
Oh, okay.
So that's just what I just wanted. It's been eating away at me. Like, oh man, I don't want to give the wrong impression, or for the actual informed sound like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh no,
so
you did.
Jeanette, I don't know if Jeanette was still in the same camp with the same McKettrick or whatever his manager's name was. With Willie Lewis and them. I don't know if he was still in that camp for the later fight with Willard, but I do know that apparently he was going to get that shot if Moran beat Jack Johnson.
Oh yeah.
Which was not going to happen. Which is why Jack Johnson took that fight. Johnson was cashing in, man. He'd had such a long storied career and fought unheralded, and then became notable, and still took another 5 years and change after.
Yeah.
And I think he actually won the colored heavyweight title from Denver Ed Martin in early 1903.
Yeah.
And it was December, if I'm not mistaken, it was December 1908. So it was a lot of seasons that he just couldn't get his opportunity, even though he was recognized in the papers and touted as what he was, which was the best non-white fighter in the sport, the king of the heavies, and a legit champ, listed next to the white champs of the time. They would make the distinction. They would say the heavyweight champ, Jim Jeffries. Then they would say colored heavyweight champ, Jack Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
Or whoever was the champ at the time. It wasn't always Johnson, Bob Armstrong, Denver Ed Martin. But this was a real championship. It's just didn't have the prestige because they're fighting in the hotbed for boxing was a racist white majority country. So obviously they're not going to be like, but within the people who knew the craft, Johnson was often thought to be better than Tommy Burns. That was a given. And there was a writer at the end of early in 1908. This is before Johnson secured the match with Burns. A writer was saying heading into 1908, finally it looks like this year we'll have a single champion at heavyweight. Like he's literally pining over the fact that they've not been able to get the top colored fighter and the top white fighter to go at it in the ring to have one champion. So that's partly why what Jack Johnson did was monumental, because structurally that changed the sport in the marquee division. It was pivotal, but he'd already done so much. It was cash-in time for him. He's like, yo, I'm gonna fight these other guys, these white guys who've been denying me for 5 years that I've been a champion, and I'm gonna just beat them up and laugh at everybody. I'm gonna make my money, race my cars. It's me time. I can't. There were structural things. There were repercussions things, but the guy was like, no fucks given. He'd been through so much, and if I'm not mistaken, his parents were slaves.
Oh yeah,
parents were born slaves. Jack Johnson
was born in like 78, right? Or what's the 78? Somewhere around there, right?
Yeah. So if literally your parents, the people if they're born slave, like it's not like today where you'd be like, oh, I feel alienated. Okay, yeah, sure. The life is still very harsh. There's all kinds of like cultural and without getting into that all around the world, but you didn't, you're a person. You're not, you weren't born to property. Like the horrific times these men went through. So I'm not going to matchups. There's larger issues at play with these things, and everyone navigated that difficult as best they could. But anyway, to get back to our live stream, yeah, we're not measuring greatness as people or greatness of the overall career. We're just talking about how the styles interact between the two fighters. Sorry about the rant there, because I've been doing a lot of research about this early time, and you have to brace against,
Yeah, no, we need that for sure. I always love to get that insight from you, Random Acoustic Thoughts. So I appreciate you going on that run or rant, as you call it, because it just kind of sheds more light on just the situation at hand. So yeah, Johnson definitely, as we always say, he had his career prior to the championship and then that after. And most people only see and recall the one that was after the championship.
Right. In the documentaries, they act like it just is a smooth line from Jeffries to Hart to Burns.
No.
To John. And then they're like, and then suddenly Jack Johnson's like, suddenly he was considered like a top 2 or 3 heavyweight from like 1903 all the way when at the very end of 1908, when Tommy Burns accepted the largest single fighter purse in history, 30,000, to face him and fought him in Australia. Hugh McIntosh, the promoter, was also the ref, which is interesting. And he got which was wild, but that's,
Australian promoter.
Yeah, put together a lot of big fights. He was I guess he went on to become a newspaper magnate. I think I saw that in Clay Moyle's excellent book on Sam Langford, which I would recommend everyone get and buy it new also from a book. Support your bookstores and make sure the author gets a cut.
Well,
if you can, if you're in a position to. If you're broke, it's all right. But if you have the means, buying these books new. I just bought a book on Joe Jeanette. I won't comment on my thoughts on it right now because I haven't looked at it deeply enough. But yeah, it cost me more to get it new, but I know the guy gets a cut. The guy who wrote it gets his own little slice because I can afford it. So if I couldn't afford it, it's different. You got the means, folks. Support the artists, support the authors.
Oh yeah. I think that is a good thing. Of course, just keeping the history alive
Hey, John,
in many capacities.
I'm sorry to break in, brother. I need to jump off for like 3 minutes. Jump back on.
All right, cool.
All right, cool.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. So salute to Random Acoustic Dot says Jack Johnson grew up with but Dan says Jack Johnson grew up with all white friends eating at their tables, sleeping over at their houses. Jack Johnson never knew racism existed, according to Johnson. Yeah, interesting right there. Very interesting. I need to look into that, of course, and it being substantiated. But yeah, very interesting. So someone has listed it on Wiki. So very, very interesting. As my man Rodolfo said, I do recall him, I guess, running into a fighter, and that's what led him to actually becoming a fighter because of the fact that he saw that this was a means to make money and not have to labor in the same manner as a number of the blue collar jobs that were there at that particular time that were relevant, thriving at a high capacity, I guess you could say. Well, to a certain degree, but yeah, working at the docks, all of that stuff. So he saw fighting as an opportunity, and with opportunity, comes many potential rewards. So he took advantage, and he was rewarded nicely. Just thinking about where his career, or at least what the peak point of his career, him getting the world heavyweight title and all of that stuff. And of course, we know what happened in the aftermath. But that being said, he rode it to the top. And, he stayed active and was the fighter, and he was willing to trade and do what he needs to do to get there. So Dubai says, I think Randy Turpin beat Robinson on this day. Oh, on this day. Awesome. Yeah. Randy Turpin, Sugar Ray Robinson, great fighters without a doubt. Randy Turpin, yes, a man to take out Robinson. So they had an interesting little rivalry right there. Probably one worth a deeper dive in some capacity, but that is a good one. So on this day, July 10th. So that's pretty awesome. Dan, Jack grew up in middle class. His father was a Union officer in the Civil War. Oh, interesting there, Dan. Interesting. That's a good nugget. That is a good nugget to have right there. As Rodolfo said, yeah, Jack Johnson lived one hell of a life. Indeed he did. Rodolfo Rivera Jr. lived it to the fullest, certainly. Moncio, salute to Moncio. Appreciate you, Moncio. Hey, everyone, check out Monster Yo. Give him a subscribe. He actually is a promoter for Sonny McEwen, who we just had on. It was great discussing varying topics with Monster Yo. So everyone, be sure to go over there. Check out Monster Yo without a doubt. And I appreciate you, Monster Yo, for sharing information and kind of chatting with me. And I appreciate the genuineness of what you do for Sonny and ultimately the sport itself in terms of being involved in that capacity. So salute to Monster Yo, everyone. Check him out. Subscribe. I think you'll like it without a doubt. So thanks for dropping by, Monster Yo. Wikipedia, Jack Johnson, easy. I could Wikipedia it. Certainly, sometimes the Wikipedia stuff is not necessarily 100% on point, but certainly I've Wikipedia'd him before, but I like to look at it and find it in the archives myself, pretty much for the stuff that I do dabble into. I do like to go through the archives and look at the actual accounts, newspapers, or whatever it may be myself, as opposed to Wikipedia. I try to kind of factor things in outside of the Wikipedia aspect because I want to get it from the different sources of where people may have gotten it from Wikipedia. Now, some of the stuff is sourced on there, so it's a good tool for that as well. And I have looked at where some of the statements, some of the things mentioned, linked to from a source perspective, but I always try to do the due diligence myself as well. Random back in the mix there. Salute to you, Random. Appreciate you checking it out. Or jumping back in the mix there, Random. Always great to have you. Always great. So we were just talking about Jack Johnson and whether he lived a middle class life or grew up with all whites and shared food with them and didn't know racism existed. Dan mentioned seeing something to that tune on Wikipedia, and what I said was that Wikipedia is a good thing. I like to source things myself as well, but that being said, Wikipedia does have some links, and I think those help to source some things that are listed on there, but not everything is always 100% accurate. But that being said, I'm not saying that is not the case, Dan. It's just that I haven't looked through Wikipedia. That's usually not my main goal or not one that I go to first before trying to dig into a fighter's career.
Yeah, I feel you, but sources is important. Like, I don't inherently trust Wikipedia whatsoever. Not inherently. I go in with maximum skepticism because anyone can edit it. And the threshold is just someone being willing to do it. And the blowback against that are the people who donate their time for free to fact check and go in and look at all these articles. So there's a lag sometimes between BS and the fact that the BS will eventually be corrected. Now, on important stuff, medical articles and things, there are obviously experts who just check and make sure if that thing's been edited and go fix it. But on less important stuff, like biographies, small facts about people's lives, there's no like Wikipedia army that goes and checks these boxes. So I know there are some credible people who update the information, but I don't inherently trust it. And same with like BoxRec and Cyber Boxing Zone, or even newspaper accounts from the day written by people who were there. You can't trust anything 100% because people are people. And that's the same with any kind of history. Everything has to be interpreted between the intent of the participants, including the people who document it. So, we do what we can, but there's always uncertainty. I wouldn't, if someone said Jack Johnson grew up not knowing what racism was, I would be massively skeptical of that by default, because it sounds like some wishful thinking. And so I would need to see something very, it's also one thing I think people should keep in mind is there are people who know their stuff, right? But when they're sourcing their material, they see something and they don't see evidence to the contrary without necessarily confirming it in the positive. And then take that innocently, and that gets relayed, even though if you crawl all the way back, there's nothing there, or it's a story that's appeared before, just like fighter names. Like the great Jimmy McLarnin, the Belfast Spider. Yeah, there was a guy in like 1900 before. I think from the 1800s, the Belfast Spider didn't nickname certain things. They come up again and again. Same with stories. Like the bigger they are, the harder they fall. You mentioned that the other day, Josh. Yeah. Well, I think Fitz, Joe Walcott. Who else said that? A lot of guys have said that. Right. And I was mentioned backstage, like, that's probably an old thing from military history, from antiquity. That's probably been said in various languages through cultures as long as people have been fighting each other, and the big guy goes down to the little dude, which is inevitable over time. It gets celebrated. Look, the little guy overcame. That's the whole basis of martial arts, is overcoming inherent disadvantages like being smaller. So that's an old theme. That's not something that the boxer didn't invent that. It's not like a, but it's been woven into this wonderful thing, and it applies so beautifully to this wonderful combat sport. So it's been used, but my point is, like, with sourcing things, I would recommend people be extremely skeptical. Like, I read this excellent book, right? I trust Clay Moyle. I know he's a legit person with a massive book collection. He's a serious person, right? I trust him completely. But I still went and started looking up all these newspaper articles, because editorial decisions can affect what even the most knowledgeable people write. So I bought an archive account. It's like whatever, $120 a year. And I started looking up, okay, Halifax Spectator, 16 December 1903. Okay, I'm going to go. I want to see that whole article. I want to see that writer, that same author, what he says about all the other boxers that I'm sort of studying in the periphery of Sam Langford's career, and get a flavor for how he writes about different people compared to how other authors for other newspapers in other cities, or even the same city, write about these boxers. They don't always agree, and some guys want to hype somebody. Like a very credible Rob Roy, who was very credible for the wrote for, I think over time, for the Post and the Globe here in Boston, where the scene was on fire. In his preview piece for the Langford Gans bout in 1903, he left out that loss to Danny Dwayne that Langford had suffered that year. And he's very credible. I mean, his command of what was happening then, he was a serious player. Management and boxers would be leaving messages with him for other boxers. Like, we have a message here that's a common thing. That's like every time they're writing, there's always someone's leaving a challenge or forfeit money. The writers were serious, but I did notice he left out that Danny Dwayne loss in his very intense write-up for that thing. So you even have to interpret credible people for what they're doing in the moment. And that means Wikipedia is like 7 steps from confirmed. Because even when I'm writing, I'm looking at the actual reporting from the newspaper of the guy who was at a fight. That's that's only just, now I have confirmation of that guy's opinion in that publication on that day.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have. You can't know everything. You got to understand how much there is that you cannot know, that is gone, that is lost, and even if it's been reported on the time. So it goes deep, folks. Don't just read Wiki and be like, oh, now I know this. Now I can go argue with people. Man, you got to, it's a lot of it's interpretation.
Yeah.
Look at championships. If you don't count the color championships, sorry, bro, I cut you off. What's that?
No, you're good. I was just saying, it's interpretation there for sure. But yeah, go ahead at that point on the colored titles, which were big there for sure, or during that period.
Right. So you've researched, you see the authors talking like they're both champions. And so, now, regardless of what's been in documentaries, regardless of what Bert Sugar said, or however people managed to distill down that distant time to something they felt they could relate in that moment, separate from all of that, Jack Johnson was the champion in 1903, beat Denver Ed Martin. It was reported as such. It was billed as such. And he was the rival champion to Jeffries and then Hart and then Tommy Burns until he finally got the fight with Tommy Burns. Shout out to Hugh McIntosh for putting up 30 grand. And Johnson didn't make 30 grand. Burns got the huge purse, and that was enough to get him to do the fight. So that made history right there. So McIntosh later promoted fights between Sam Langford and Sam McVeigh, Sam Langford and Bill Lang, McVeigh and other guys, in Australia. Just, he was doing it up. He did a lot of big things for boxing. Australia was another hotbed still at that time. The U.S., Australia, England, these are like the 3 primary places. And then within the U.S., the East Coast, then you have California, and then also Chicago. In like this early era, there were certain places where a lot of heavy duty stuff went down, where the clubs wouldn't just have local lads or even local lads versus notable fighters. They would sometimes bring in both notable fighters. Travel's a lot more difficult these days. Bring in notable fighters both from outside the area to put on a big fight there. The amount of athletic clubs, the amount of work that was there, like Langford's first full season, 1903, brother had at least 28 fights. And he fought, I think, 12 times at the Lenox Club. And then all those other times, the others, at least 16, were all probably split between 7 or 8 different athletic clubs. This is just one year, 1903. Only have had one pro fight all the way to an experienced fight for the win over an all-time great Joe Gans in 1 year. So, but even still, the reporting is different. We have to be skeptical. I would just recommend everyone be skeptical and don't throw stuff out like it if you haven't verified that you can know it. You can say, I heard this, someone said this, but there's a lot of, we got to beware of certainty. And I've been researching down to the nitty gritty, and I still have a lot of uncertainty. There's no endpoint where you go, it's like I was there. No, dude, it's not like that. It's not like that. But shout out to you, 86, because your video on, especially like the Fulton one, these are very well researched. These are very credibly researched to the degree that we're able to. Short of writing a book on the guy, you're giving them their full credit. The McVeigh one, you're going in there deep, and that's what it requires. And you don't even speak with certainty all the time. So if you're not, if credible people like the Boxing Librarian or Scrapbook Boxing aren't like we do our best, but if you're doing research, you start to realize how much you just can't know for sure. Just can't know.
Yeah.
It's all good though. Fantasy fights, there's no threshold. Sorry, brother.
Yeah. No, I was saying I'm with you for sure. Yeah, that research piece is a huge piece. That's a huge part of the overall process. Certainly, going and diving into and looking into fighters' careers and some of the other things to include some of the early life stuff. I always try to find notes and references to those types of things as well that could be substantiated and all. Real quick, salute to Poland Ball 69 in the building. The boss says, "I'd love to see the Great White Hope, where James Earl Jones plays a character based on Jack." Oh yeah, you're mentioning that in in the and the names are different in that movie actually. And it's certainly different in that movie, but yeah, I think you make some great points there. Just thinking about the research overall, random and what goes into it, and yeah, there's a ton of stuff that isn't even out there or hasn't been really pushed out there as yet because it's still in the archives, and that's a pretty meticulous process diving through that as well. You managed to run across that Langford fight that wasn't reported on some of those major or on those major boxing records type sites where they keep the stats on a fighter's record and all that. So I think that's a big piece of it. Of how that research is of benefit.
Yeah, and it was in, it's also like with all this digital media and all this stuff, it was in. Yes, it was in the Revere Journal, which is not part of the archives, the two archives that I pay for. But it was there online. It just wasn't and I'd searched before, but there's sometimes the scanning technology, the print to scan, or they find better examples of the same newspaper and then they get a better scan of it. Now the digital function does find it. So I was able, but I found it in a major paper too. It was either the Post or the Globe, and I had searched through the other archive that did have the Post and the Globe for all the applicable time frame. But I was still able to then find a fight that was there in the archives, just sitting there. Just like I found a picture of Joe Jeanette from 05, and I just bought a book on Joe Jeanette. It's fantastic photos. None of them are from 1905. They started in 07, it looks like. So, and it was just there, just right there in I think it was the Boston Post or the Globe, just sitting there in the archive with his name underneath it as a preview for Langford Jeanette. But I hadn't seen it, and that's public domain. I hadn't seen it out there. I've put it out there on Facebook and stuff. Go for it, people.
Yeah.
But he's like baby faced. He's very young, very early in his career. His first, I think, pro season was 05, wasn't it, or was it 04?
Yeah, I think 4. Yeah, 04. I believe it was 04 as well.
Yeah, so it's quite possible the photos from 04. They didn't exactly snap photos all the time. The photographer, I think, was Freddie Green. He there's a fight, George Byers, something about George Byers. He wanted to get booked in Boston, and the photo looks pretty clearly he's younger than he would have looked in 1903. They just had the photo they had. So even when I find a picture, I don't know when they took the photo. I haven't researched photo shoots. I don't have that information. This photo shoot skill, that would be some extra deep level, matrix level, down to the molecule type research I can't do. So I'm still stuck with interpreting all the information I come across, and I'm going down. I'm paying to be in the archives, able to with the search function. I've got thousands of clippings. So, but that's nothing. I've done nothing in the scope of things, boxing history. I've done nothing. I've just accumulated a decent amount, not a huge amount, about a very narrow time frame. And I'm no expert. I'm just learning everything I can, but I'm no expert. And I've spent 3 years looking at these several years of boxing, just in certain weight classes as they pertain to tops 4 fighters. And I know nothing. I know nothing at all. So just beware of false certainty. It's a trap. And it gets in the way of academia, actual research. But shout out to you, 86, because I love those videos. But as a skeptic, I also go try and look that shit up. You could find it, I could find it, and I actually pay to get behind some paywalls. So if someone can research it, I can research it. And that's the attitude I try to take, because I trust certain people. But I also go research it because maybe there's context that didn't make it through the production filter that would have been included in if your videos were 2 hours instead of 20 minutes, you go deep in 20 minutes. But if you did a 2-hour video, there's more stuff you'd have that I can find for myself. So I do that. I use your learning, your research, BL. BL's research and Scrapbook's research to inform my own, to know what to look for. Same with Claymores' book. I've looked up a great deal of the references in that book. I've tried to basically replicate his research to some degree. So anyway,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I know that was an epic rant, but it's just I mostly take in information. You know, I talk a lot, but I don't talk anything compared to the amount of time I spend reading. So sometimes it just bursts out like, rah, take that.
Yeah, no, you're good to go. I think you brought up some very, very compelling, very good points for sure. And as Dan mentions, until 20 years ago, the whole world got its information of the world from newspapers. Yes, sir, indeed. They played a critical part. They were some of the strongest and most influential companies on earth. Yeah, you know, boxing in itself, I've recalled on a number of occasions how, you know, a lot of the title claims and things of that nature were substantiated through newspaper. You know, a telegram would be sent, someone saying they're willing to fight X and X, and that stuff is reported through the newspapers. And even when you think about John L. Sullivan and him winning the world heavyweight champion or a world heavyweight championship at the time that he did, it was substantiated by the Police Gazette, who had their own recognized champion, and therefore they put some things out, you know, put different articles, put different telegrams, etc., out saying that, you know, in order for Sullivan to be considered a true champion, you know, for instance, he'd have to fight Jake Kilrain under the bare knuckle rule. So that's the way he.
That's right. Kilrain was his dude, right? Yeah, the publisher. I read just a tiny bit about that in a fantastic book I bought by Kevin Smith, Boston's Boxing Heritage, prize fighting from 1882 to 1955. It's not a long book, but it's fantastic. It's got pictures. It's got a great picture of Spike Sullivan fought, among other people, Joe Gans. I think he was 40-1. I'm not sure if he had any draws when he fought Joe Gans. But it's got a great photo of him, and I haven't seen a really good picture of him. But anyway, I just want to mention that. So they do mention some of those fighters, you know, because a lot of heavy-duty people ended up fighting out of Boston or being associated with it.
Oh, yeah. Boston was a hotbed. I know we've talked about this before, how sometimes the tide shifts. Thinking about the Bay Area, it was a hotbed. Just, you know, thinking about San Francisco and all of that stuff. And it shifted over time, but certainly back then, Boston was one of the premier destinations, as well as New Orleans. Then, as I mentioned, out in Cali, of course, New York. And then Philly has always been a fight town. So a lot of rich history, a lot of rich information out there pertaining to a lot of the stuff that was taking place within these cities. And newspapers were critical and crucial, actually, to all of this stuff being reported and people getting more familiar with these individuals, of course, because you couldn't just fly over to see a fight back then. So it was really a major task in terms of just getting that information out and getting it passed on while contests were actually happening, taking places in different states. You know, thinking about like being across the world or across the country in some instances, you know.
Yeah, like when Sam Langford fought the great Barbados Joe Walcott for the welterweight title in 1904, you know, they engaged a special train car to bring people back from the fight to, I think it was Salem, Massachusetts, so they could catch the train home to Boston.
Okay.
You know, so some hundreds of the fans that went to the fight, like, you know, they actually had to think about that at that time. Whereas now we just be like, yo, the fight's over, but T is running, man. Commuter rail.
Yeah.
Bing, bang, welcome home. Or Uber, or any number of things. I saw Rodolfo say he wonders what the life was like before the internet. I think for people who are thirst for knowledge, separate from everything else, I mean, everything is different, has changed a lot, but people who thirst for knowledge, you read more books, and documentaries on TV seem to have a lot more impact.
Yeah.
They felt like if you were really like World War II, like studying the Second World War, the World at War, like you have to see that series. Battlefield, there's certain ones that you just have to see. But the World at War was like, you know, that's one of your main sources. If you're not going to go actually into the archives. Now with the digital archives, like I can do research that if I'm organized enough, I can do research that previous researchers couldn't do because the digital archives didn't exist for them. They'd have to go to where they actually have the microfilm or whatever in the libraries and actually be there, and that puts a high bar if you have a normal job like I do, if you're just a normal person who just has this passion. So
yeah, that's the benefit of this technological age. Yeah, there's so much information out there. It's just a matter of getting to it. So there's certainly varying sites, varying sources, and all of that stuff that you kind of dive into them, and some will become familiar. I use Chronicling America a lot because this is the Library of Congress. They run that site, so it has a ton of the newspaper accounts for varying things within it, and it will have multiple articles from multiple different papers for a particular fight or something of that nature. I don't always list them all. I'll take one and use that as my main one, but I'll take a look at other ones to just see if the accounts measure it up or if they were kind of parallel to each other. Sometimes you'll have some where, of course, it's a telegram in some sense. So that same telegram, it would be the exact message from where it originated to where it ends up. Other newspapers using it and just kind of relaying it in that sense. But certainly we benefit from it this day and age. And I think that's proven to be a benefit for some of these historic boxers as well. Because, certainly thinking about it from a pre-internet age, I think, and I grew up with, I had got a computer at one point, I think it was like 99 or 2000 or something like that. That was when I first got a computer. And prior to that, you're right. You had to dive into books, look at what was on the television, documentaries, etc. Some of the word of mouth or stories that were told by people. But we've got a lot better things, a lot better tools that can help us dig more of that information out right now.
Yeah, and I think, I could say, like, I wasn't like super heavy into video games, but I'm old enough that, like, when I was a kid, my friend had a Commodore 64.
Okay.
I'll just say that. But like in 95 when I got on AOL, I was in college, it was like you could kind of play, like, you could just, the chat rooms are okay. It was interesting and novel. But the main thing about the internet was if you could get the connection, because at the time it was hard to get on, you'd take turns trying to log on because they had more customers than bandwidth. If you get on, you could play, if you didn't get booted off, you could play games against other people online.
Yeah.
That was a thrill. Instead of having your mates come over and just like, oh, we could play some games. You could they'd just be there. And that felt monumental. Just to me at the time, so the internet has done a lot of stuff, obviously, but that was the main thing that stood out to me at that point in my life. I was like, now games are really cool.
They are. I still play them. I have the Xbox, what is it? Series X or whatever. So I still play it. Occasionally get in there and mix it up. Rodolfo says, all I know is that if I was born in the 80s or something, I would watch the History Channel all day. Yeah, certainly the History Channel.
Yeah, but they don't think they didn't have the History Channel yet. But there were channels that would play it. Like, at least, I don't think they had the History Channel in the 80s. I think that was later. I could be wrong.
I'm not even sure in terms of that. Based on when I came around.
Okay, my favorite games all time. I only have Empire Total War, which is like a combination of like turn-based strategy, empire management, and then like real-time fight, strategy, like large-scale armies. I only allow myself one game just occasionally, but historically, Command and Conquer, Red Alert, that whole thing in the Total War series. Those are the ones but back in the day, I could do Mario. It's been so long since I thought about that. I always like 10-Yard Fight. That's a Nintendo 1 game. And the original Mario Brothers, I could do that first stage, running the whole time, just run and jump, no stops. We played enough of that. That was the threshold. Now you had to go full speed the whole board. The first one, couldn't do it on the second one. But
yeah, I've seen some videos of people doing that type of crazy little situation where they can finish the whole thing in a short amount of time. But boxing games, they've evolved. You know, just thinking about where it started and all of that. One of the first boxing games, of course, that I played was Punch Out. Then Riddick Bowe had a game, etc. But it's good to see, you know, boxing has been in that gaming world as well. So I like to have it. And, you know, I want to see more with some of the historic fighters as well. Just thinking about it from that perspective, some type of simulation or whatever it may be. Maybe it's a situation where you can put in your own characters and all that stuff, and sometimes you could create one. But that being said, yeah, I always was into those and playing those as well. So still am, you know, play Fight Night all the time. Even this new one that's coming out is called Undisputed. Well, I have it, but I don't have a PC, so I need to actually get one to be able to play it, a Windows PC or whatever, because all of my stuff was Mac, and they haven't released it there yet. But certainly it is one of those cool things just to see some of it still being got there. And yeah,
For real, I like Punch Out. That was my jam. Soda Pop Instinct, and oh man, all of those. That was just a great game. That really was a great game. Not an easy one.
Yeah, I think about old Glass Joe starts it out, but no, that is a cool one. That is a cool one for sure. So yeah, it'd be cool to have, you know, something that we could simulate these old fighters going at it. As I was mentioning, you know, I've just been thinking about ways that things can be evolved. AI has been the rage. Maybe there's some things that come out there, or that'll become out there, or that'll be out there at some point that allow you to reconstruct some of these fights and all that stuff based on accounts that we have, as opposed to accounts that we have via newspaper, and kind of piece all of that together, create a video or something where you have like lifelike characters that are actually going through the sequence of the round by round. Is kind of smart enough to understand that, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure that, I mean, video games already come so far. I'm sure it'll just get exponentially more intense. I've just gotten old. I read now. I play a little of the strategy game just because I like it. I like that sort of military thing. But I mostly do, at this point in my life, I mostly just read and documentaries, and I listen to like last night at work, I listened to about 8 hours of World War One military historians and lectures they gave back at the anniversary, the 2014 anniversary of the outbreak of war. And like, it's like, but I used to absolutely love gaming, so I don't judge gamers, but I'm a recovered gamer, so now I just redirect my energies. But it's fun, man. I've seen some of the games played, like just brief moments. You know, the Grand Theft series was awesome. I used to just steal a motorcycle and go joyriding. Yeah. You know, there are lots of things you can do in that game, but that was always my thing. Go out to the country and tear it up over the hills. Awesome fun. So much. Those are good games. You know, sort of.
Open world.
I think it was like the Zelda. Was it the second Zelda game? Oh, this is so many years ago now. Where you could kind of walk around different areas, kind of freeform. You didn't have to like walk along a line. That felt major at the time. Look where we are now, but that felt really major at the time. That is so many years ago.
Yeah, it's like you're in a real world in these games. This one, and you spoke of reading. Meanwhile, I want to show this one. This is the Ice Punch buddy Brian Duncan wrote this one, so I'm reading it again, and I'm gonna get him on, and we're gonna talk about it. But it's about two fighters who were out of Wales, I believe it is, and they actually died on the Titanic as they were headed over to Pittsburgh, of course, of all places, the home of Harry Greb, and this would have been a point where, or they would have probably been even deeper in history and all that stuff. So I'm going to get him on to talk about it at some point. But I recommend this book for sure. I remember when he started talking about it and actually went through the process of doing it. He is he battened down the hatches. Took him a little while to go dig in, research it, and I like what he came out. And it's not too long. You see, it's not super thick. So you get a real good feel, and I like what he did here. So salute to Brian Duncan. Gonna bring him on at some point, as mentioned.
That's very cool. That's very, very cool. Yeah, I don't have a ton of boxing books, but they all relate directly to my to my research.
My bad. I gave you a spoiler, Rodolfo. Yeah, but they don't come back, or they don't make it off the ship. My bad for giving you the spoiler, but it's still good.
Yo, Rodolfo, that's another thing about the pre-internet age. Much harder to get spoilers. That's an internet thing, because the people promoting it aren't necessarily, maybe if you watch the review of a movie or something. But like, really, it was easier to avoid spoilers back then. Now I have to like disable notifications on my phone because I love Bellator, right? I watch Bellator MMA promotion, but I have to listen live. I can't watch, and I've got to sometimes there's a delay if I got a meeting or if I have to go do some loud stuff. So yeah, I'm always avoiding spoilers. I have to go in and change all my settings for notifications. That didn't used to be the case, Rodolfo. And when you weren't, and before cell phones, mobile phones, like when you weren't home, that was it. You might not have an answering machine. It might just ring and ring and ring and ring. And then you have to figure out when to hang up, when to give up. And when it was rude, if they were sleeping, that they're trying, like don't make them wake up to hang up or to like answer it. So like, yeah, it was different. It was different back in the day before it, but it wasn't necessarily better or worse. It was just different.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Yeah, that's one of the things. Blake Gallimore had asked Joshua, have you read Live Fast, Die Young yet? I need to read that. I haven't. That's one I'm going to get. I've been saying I'm going to purchase it. That'll probably be one of the next ones I get. I want to get the Clay Moyle book on Langford as well, but Live Fast, Die Young. I've heard Steve Compton doing interviews in regards to it. I know he put a lot of research in there, digging into the history of Greb. So that is one that is on my list to get and read because we know Greb had a crazy, insane, and amazing career. So I can only imagine some of the accounts and things of that nature that we'll get in more details through that book. I don't know. Have you read that one, Random?
No, I haven't. It's on my list, but that's, we're talking the mid to late teens and the early 20s. That's outside the scope of my research. Mm-hmm. So everything I've bought is, so like I've got my main books actually with me, other than my Nat Fleischer Fighting Furies, the books, the old orange covered books that my wife found, some of them. But I've got Sam Langford's book by Clay Moyle. That's an excellent book. I've got Boston's Boxing Heritage by Kevin Smith. Fantastic book.
Oh, yeah.
I've got The First Black Boxing Champions, Essays on Fighters of the 1800s to the 1920s. By a collection of historians and authors, but edited by Colleen Aycock, who's a Joe Gans expert. Oh, yeah, I'd love to interview her. I'd love to just have a discussion with her. What a great work she's done. And then Mark Scott. That's a great book. And then I purchased George Dixon, The Short Life of Boxing's First Black World Champion, 1870 to 1908, by Jason Winders.
Yeah, pretty crazy story that is. I haven't read that one either, but I know it's a pretty crazy story. Sad ending in terms of where he ended up in life, but great fighter and transcending fighter. Certainly out of Canada. Canada has a deep boxing history, as I've mentioned on a number of occasions. So, yeah, they were very instrumental during those times, especially those guys that ended up relocating to Boston because, it was like the premier at that point.
Yeah, George Dixon, one of many powerful Canadian fighters who ended up fighting out of Boston. Little Chocolate here, George Dixon. Old Chocolate, George Godfrey, George Byers, Sam Langford, the Big Sandy Ferguson. There were a lot of guys who came down and fought out of here, out of Canada, because Boston was one of the meccas for boxing, and also to get some work in the city.
Oh yeah.
Not everyone showed up here. Like boxing was the first thing they did. Langford came here and did some other work and did work up in New Hampshire before he ended up boxing. Mm-hmm. Like getting work in the city, that's as old as cities. That goes back to antiquity. When there was hardship in the country, people would flock to the cities.
Oh yeah.
So that was the case, and after World War II, a lot of the persistent and activity in the South is why a lot of people came up the river, came up to Chicago. We got some great Chicago blues out of it. Guys like Muddy Waters coming up the river, like Louis Armstrong, although different time periods, but like over time, people going up north to the city. Yeah, man, a lot of the North benefited hugely from that. It was a loss for the South. A lot of people couldn't take it there, and so a lot of talent came up here. That's too bad. That's why you want to have an inclusive society in the ideal world, so that you get the talent, so you're not scaring people off. Look what, without getting into politics, what's happening in Florida right now is they're cracking their own economy because of legislative bigotry. But I'm not going to go any deeper in it. I don't bring up politics on boxing talks, but the shifts in American culture did influence where boxing was hottest and who fought where. and who was getting paid where and where the money was. There's the gold rush in general. A lot boxing benefited from that. A lot of money was put up, and a lot of people who had made fast money who liked to gamble. Well, what were they going to gamble on? What's better to gamble on than a good old fight? And so, as you know, like some of these mining towns, including like the one that Dempsey bankrupted with his demand on with his guarantee
Shelby,
against Tommy
Montana.
Burns. What was that? Butte? That Shelby is Shelby
it was
still a
against,
place?
Gibbons.
Which is the one that's not even a place? Is it Butte? One of those mining towns. I would
went down there, but I think it was the one that actually went bankrupt. I believe it was Shelby, Montana, and it was when he fought Tommy Gibbons. But it's near Butte. Butte, I guess is I know that's one that has been a hot. I need to look it up. I could be.
Yeah, some of those. I don't want to. Again. Yeah. Again, I don't want to pretend to know stuff I don't know or can't recall. I don't have time to look up right now to confirm. So just take that with a grain of salt, folks. But at least one of those mining towns that put on big fights isn't even a place anymore. I mean, it's like there was specific elements of what was happening in America and also Australia and England that brought boxing into like a major money thing for more and more people. So like with someone like Jack Dempsey, you can separate how tough you think his fights were. Icon. Everyone benefited from the fact that the fighters in general, just as Johnson had done, other guys, Burns, could demand more. Joe Gans did, and Battling Nelson got some giant purses.
Mm-hmm.
There was a whole drama there, but they sorted out. Money talks. Money talks. Oh, yeah. Jimmy Britt wasn't going to fight Gans. No way. But money talks. So just like whatever issues they had, they were like, all right, this is an awful lot of money. Now we're ready. Before we're too old. They might have cut it a little close. I don't know. Is it prime versus prime, or is it even close to prime?
I mean, I think they're close there for sure. They still are very close there. So I think, this is a very good fight. It's better in terms of where they are age trajectory and career-wise as far as Mayweather Pacquiao, because neither of these guys, outside of Spence being in that DUI accident, and he had a retina torn or at least partially torn in one of his fights. But outside of that, they have been fairly dominant for the most part, both of them in their career. A few tough fights here and there, but I think they're as close to it as you can probably get, being 32 and 35. So I think, that won't be an issue.
So from my understanding, it's best versus best. Whether or not it's absolute peak versus peak, they're still the best. So fans can at least have that. I mean, I think we're looking at that with Fury. Like, is he at his best? I think it's hard to think he's at his best at this age in that shape, even if he's still the best. So like, there's a timer on these fights. Sometimes the money, like Jack Dempsey did actually, with the right guarantee for him, of course, being Dempsey, but they did try to put together a fight with Harry Wills when Harry Wills was in his mid-30s, after not fighting him for his title reign. Like, they did try to put it together in the late stage with a huge guarantee and stuff like that. So sometimes these fights, there's one or both are waiting for the timing. Sometimes the timing just never happens. Sam Langford wanted to fight with Tommy Burns even after he lost the title to Johnson, because it would have legitimized his own claim as the other best heavyweight, re-legitimized his claim. But he never got the fight. I think Burns actually got hurt, but he also wasn't keen on that fight. A lot of guys weren't keen on the Langford fight when he was at his best. He was just kind of extra scary. It's like, there may be examples of other guys like that, but because of the power, there are only a handful of guys who ever hit like that. And sometimes they did get their opportunity. Although with Archie Moore as a finisher, not a power puncher, but as a finisher, he had to wait till he was past his prime before he held the world, the world title. And he just went ahead and kept it for almost a decade, because he wasn't done. He had already done so much. But that experience, just like with Langford, the experience in fights is separate from world titles. And Archie Moore had done so much before then. He later fought his way into being a top-ranked heavyweight. Have you ever seen the famous photo of him holding his fist up next to Sonny Liston's? He looks like he has toy hands. I know Liston had big fists, but you'd be like, how is Moore winning as a heavyweight? Well, he had that kind of skill.
Yeah, he was.
Even if he couldn't beat Marciano, like, he had that kind of Same with Ezra Charles, not a large heavyweight, but that's where the opportunity was. He went ahead and did it. You know, shout out to them. There are a lot of guys who tried it. Young Stribling tried to make that leap all the way up weights to heavyweight. Couldn't get the title, but great career. So shout out to the guys like Ezra Charles and Marciano who did get their opportunity, even if it wasn't soon enough, and they made the most.
Hey, Dan says Dempsey would have beat the shit out of Wills. Nah, I don't think that was happening. I don't think that was happening at all. And yeah, we broke down that series and the potential there. And I think that, yeah, strategically, there was a reason they didn't want to go in there with Wills when those opportunities presented itself. And it wasn't all Dempsey, the promoter, as well as his manager, Doc Kearns. He played a large role in it as well. But ultimately, I think that, yeah, like it was being mentioned, they waited him out and it never materialized. But I think that you can conceive ways for both winning their dead. So, you know, I'm sure you'll have your opinion as to why you think that Dempsey would win because of his offensive ferocity, things of that nature, seeing what he was able to do, especially in a number of those sort of drag him out fights. And we don't have any footage of Harry Wills or much footage of Harry Wills. Certainly not him at his absolute peak.
Yeah. That's the thing too. Like the little bit we have of Wills, that's not Wills at his best. Now you could say Dempsey when he was finally willing to, because he was, I think, 6 years younger than Harry Wills. When he was willing to fight Wills, when Wills was 35, maybe you could more confidently assert, I think the Dempsey that was willing to fight Wills would have beaten the 35-year-old Harry Wills. But we don't have like a visual reference. We do have the writing, and we do have people noting that Wills had lost a step. You know, like we know what the people at the time, what a lot of them were saying, if we're willing to like go and read it. But Dempsey had an opportunity to fight some of these guys when they were in a better shape, and he chose different opportunities, just like Jack Johnson. So like there was a question about whether Jack Johnson, once he'd unified the heavyweight titles, if he could beat Sam Langford. Like a lot of people thought his size would make the difference, and he was clever enough to use it. But it wasn't. The certainty is like, you got to see it. You got to see the fight to be certain. But we will get into that fight. I think we'll do Dempsey Wills, but it's not going to be any. But it's not going to be any sort of like blanket generalizations, because that's almost worse than not having an opinion sometimes. Yeah. If it's because then it takes away nuance, and nuance is what we're talking about, because it's not robots, like automated robots. These guys make adjustments in the fight, and there are a lot of experience comes into play. And I think look at Bernard Hopkins. He started late and he fought super late, but that experience and his particular grit, doesn't matter on paper. You'd be like, he's 40, what? He's going to lose. Well, there are plenty of guys who've proven a lot of people wrong with their certainty. So I don't think, unless someone's like, okay, prime Floyd Mayweather versus prime Sam Langford, where there's dozens of pounds difference between the hardest puncher, one of the hardest of all time, and a guy who's not a puncher, who's never fought at the weight the other guy was his prime. Yeah, he's going to die, but that's a different kind of certainty. That's a fight that no one would credibly book. Just like you wouldn't say, oh, well, how about Mike Tyson versus Sugar Ray Leonard? Well, no, not Mike Tyson prime versus Sugar Ray Leonard. He's going to get it. They wouldn't sanction it. So, that's the only time I show certainty is when it would question the ethics of the sport, to even consider it. But certain guys, as you know, young Peter Jackson was peaked out as a middleweight. Langford fought Johnson as a middleweight. Jack Johnson, when he was still a small heavyweight at that time, but he had his full mobility. Johnson was a beast, man. He could clown guys. He was so good. All these tough guys, these rock hard men, these iron men who were involved in pugilism when it was so much dangerous, small gloves, no mouth guard. I mean, can you imagine Johnson could clown guys. He was that good. But that doesn't mean that there's certainty that he would beat Langford, who was smaller, because Langford's specialty was beating up larger guys, even when they were really good. So, we're going to have like a good spirited debate, but like I said, we're going to pretty much ignore the chat. We'll address that in a separate show. This one's just going to be me and you, 86. So come armed. I'm going to shoot you the list tonight of my fights, so that you can, because you shot me yours. So fair is fair. I'll shoot you any that'll come up. I got to bounce out.
Cool.
It's been great being on. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Shout out to the Boxing Librarian of Scrapbook Boxing. Shout out to you, 86. Good work in general. And I'll look forward to talking to you 6 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow.
All right, let's do it.
All right, brother.
Appreciate
Peace.
you.
Well,
So random acoustic thoughts. Great to have him on to share his opinion on things. Dan says Archie Moore is awesome. Charles was a great heavyweight champion, and he beat Moore all 3 times they fought, and he KO'd Archie in his last fight. Archie Moore was so great, but not as great as Charles. Yeah, an argument can certainly be made there. You're right in that regard. An argument can certainly be made there, and Charles, he does go underrated. I think that Charles would have likely been a middleweight champion if he would have gotten an opportunity, as well as light heavyweight champion if that came about. But yeah, certainly a case can be made for the Cincinnati Cobra as a Charles, because he, just kind of went up because that's where the money was, as you mentioned, and that is where the marquee fights were and where he could potentially get a heavyweight title shot. And so it worked out for him in that regard. Dan, I'm glad Dipsy Wills never fought. Both live long, successful, productive lives. As I get older, I'm certain guys didn't fight. So sad. Most end up totally tragic. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, if they would have fought after, that period of like 1925 when they signed that contract, I don't think we would have been getting the best of either guy, because, Dempsey had been out of the ring on and off, for a pretty significant period. And Wills himself had started to slow down in terms of his fight pace as well, just fighting more in the single digits per year, or the low end of the single digits, maybe 2 or 3 here and there. So, which was different for the time, or, some fighters were fighting at one of those lower paces, but he had been fighting at a more rapid pace for sure. Blake says, that's why my favorite 2 fighters are Langford and Greb. Didn't duck anyone, without a doubt. Didn't duck them, certainly. And I think that's a big piece of the sort of aura of Harry Greb, to think that you can look into his resume and that tells you the story of just who this guy went up against and why he's held in the regard that he's held in, considering he was picking up win after win over these guys, and these are legends of the sport. So I think he is certainly one that, you just look at the accounts, from his signed, sealed, delivered, he is one of the best, period. Dan Cobra fought 3 years in World War II. Oh, yeah, saluting, fighting for the country. Salute to the veterans out there, without a doubt, as I mentioned. Semper Fi as well. Rodolfo said, is it bad that Ray Ezzard Charles' a heavyweight career as better than his light heavyweight career? He did become lineal at heavyweight, too. Yeah, I think heavyweight was probably where he achieved the most from a mainstream perspective, getting a number of the top name opponents, being able to pick up the title, having some great fights that he participated in. So that factors in right there. So I think, that wouldn't be a bad thing there, Rodolfo. Yeah, he's most associated, I would think, from a mainstream perspective. They probably generally associated him with the heavyweight division, though he put in a lot of work in those fights before that. So in there with Charlie Burley, the other Black Murderers Row fighter. So he was legit for sure. Alexander Kemmer, from what I've read, Johnson gave Langford a pretty rough time of it in, I think, 1906 match. Salute, Alex. Appreciate you dropping by, Alex. Yeah. Same here. Yeah. Langford had his moments, but eventually the size took over for the size advantage took over for Johnson, because, as you know, he could be defensive, he could be offensive as well, and there were points when he was very offensive. And Sam Langford, he could take a hell of a punch, not one of those guys you can just get out of there, stop. Just look at how deep his career went versus the number of stoppages, so that shows you he had a hell of a chin. So I think, Langford, he was going at it with him, but Johnson got the better of the actual fight. So that's what makes it more intriguing to wonder and think about what would have happened had they locked horns there when Langford was like sort of a full-time heavyweight and competing at his most premier weight, I would say. So, because he started from a low weight. He started from, lightweight or right around that, maybe even below lightweight. Interesting for sure. Rodolfo, because Flack was arguing with me, and because I said Edger had a greater run at heavyweight. Well, I think it can be subjective. Certainly, I think his mainstream run is the heavyweight run, and sort of that's what most will say is his greater run. I think that correlates, and it's not a coincidence that correlates where he had the most success from a title standpoint and recognition standpoint. So, I think there are certainly some fights that he was participating in outside of him being at heavyweight that would rate higher than the heavyweight run when you factor them all in together. So it's a very intriguing one for sure. Very intriguing. I have to look into that more myself. I want to do a video on Ezzard, so I'll look to do it at some point here. Dan says Cobra is so underrated. He started in 1940, same as Sugar Ray Robinson. Some say Cobra greatest light heavyweight ever. Cobra was great heavyweight champion. Sugar Ray Robinson beat none above middleweight. Oh yeah, that is true. I had read and even heard that he had a heck of a showing against Maxim, and he was on his way to a victory potentially on the cards before. He ended up couldn't go any further. He was exhausted and with the heat and all. So that was a good one. He was close, but no cigar for sure. Rodolfo says salute, Alex. Welcome, Alex. So compare Charles and Sugar, middleweight to heavyweight, same exact years. Charles moved on up there. I mean, he found what would work for him. So he was very much top tier at heavyweight, but same can be said middleweight. So it's one of those great careers and a true fighter, someone you can look into. You just want to understand the true historic fighters of the sport, that grit that they possess and where they came from and how they were able to accomplish what they were. No better example than Ezzard Charles if you go that route, Speaking of the old mongoose, this is Alex says, Archie Moore, you might take a peek at a black Cuban heavyweight. He beat twice. Nino Valdez. Archie's win caused Nino a title shot against The Rock. Oh yeah, Nino Valdez. I remember reading something about that. This was actually might have been recently as well. Yeah. So Archie. I mean, he could be a spoiler for sure. He super skilled. I've seen accounts where some viewed Archie as the most skilled fighter ever, or just the greatest they have been in with. And they talked about just his level of aptness as a tactician. So I think that speaks volumes right there. So both of those guys just going up and applying their trade, being able to show that they could stand out even above their probably natural weight. And I think that says a lot for sure. Then since it's a salute to Alex, Rodolfo, Ezzard Charles' win against Archie Moore at light heavyweight are legendary. Certainly some of the best you'll run across in the sport. And this was probably Archie Moore's best weight, light heavyweights. Certainly where we got a lot of mainstream success, and then that moved to heavyweight. Rodolfo says, Archie had a greater light heavyweight career, while Ezzard Charles had a greater heavyweight career. It was like Ronaldo versus Messi back in the day. Yes, certainly. That is a good one. Ronaldo versus Messi. Yeah, two greats going at it. They had styles that worked for them. Contrast in some sense, but certainly they were able to make it happen. Dan, how Archie versus Yvonne Durrell, best fight ever. Oh yeah, man. Yeah, the way Archie Moore got up from those shots, I mean, he looked like he was about to be out of there. You can tell he had to, all right, I'm going to take my time. I'm going to stay down here and make sure that I gather myself before I hop up. And he used that. And, man, that heart, that thing inside, something huge, that fighting spirit that led him through to become victorious. So, yeah, that is one of the best fights you can watch ever right there. Dan, I've seen it, and I would highly recommend it as well. Archie Moore versus Yvonne Durrell. Crazy. Rodolfo Rivera Jr., Nino Valdez was promoted as the next great heavyweight by the Ring Magazine. I actually have a Ring Magazine with Nino Valdez on the cover. Awesome stuff there, Rodolfo. Salute to Ring Magazine. Yeah, they're going fully digital now. Rodolfo had mentioned that to me, but they're no longer doing paper print, fully digital. I wonder what the prospect of was, or at least Nat Fleischer, what he might have been thinking, like, in the future, will this continue to be a newspaper? Maybe not. Or at least it'll be a ethical, physical print media rather than newspaper. So, yeah, that's pretty cool right there, Rodolfo. I like seeing some of those old school covers and things that are tied to the Ring Magazine. And yeah, they did a great job of just like kind of getting us in tune with that history and tracking it and recording what's going on. Much like the contributions we all make here on YouTube, this is a good one that will document the history for ages. You have to think it'll be for ages. So, I'm happy to be involved. Happy to be able to learn and understand, enjoy it myself. So that's big time, and we get these fighters their recognition. So, all right, but yeah, I appreciate everyone dropped by. Looks like it's about that time. 2 hours, not too bad, but definitely, hey, gonna be back on. I'll see what's up. Might be able to be on tomorrow. I gotta see what the topic could be. It'll be interesting. Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, we're gonna do. Yeah, tune in tomorrow. We're gonna stream the Random Acoustic Thoughts discussion as we look at some of the best fantasy matchups that we kind of just put together. Not meaning that they're necessarily the best fantasy matchups that can be made, but they kind of are intriguing ones worth discussion. So we'll be doing 10 and then do another part. So be on the lookout for that. Gonna send it over to this channel. But yeah, thanks everyone for sure for being in the mix with us. As always, salute to you. Hope everyone has a great night, and we will be in touch. Thanks.